Hello, everyone. Welcome to our panel on bringing people together. Thank you to Caroline and Stephen for the lovely introduction of all of us. And I'm going to do another introduction because this panel, this amazing speakers, do need another something a little bit more about them. Welcoming Margaret. Margaret is an executive leadership coach at Design Depth, leadership development for designers by designers. That is very interesting, Margaret. We do need to hear more about that. Margaret, also something interesting about Margaret is she founded the UX community and culture program for Google's global users experience in 2016. Oh, wow. That's nice, Margaret. And also, Margaret shared earlier on a keynote segment on navigating an uncertain future, advice to my younger self. Very interesting segment. If you missed it, do go back and watch that after this segment. Don't go yet. Listen to our panel first. After our sharing, you can go back there and watch Margaret's segment. Then we also have Levin. Levin is the Senior Director of Strategic Partnership, Wharton Interactive, pioneering game-changing learning. Something that's not in his LinkedIn is he speaks many languages and has been to over 40 countries. Levin has a 20-year experience and background on catalyzing partnerships as a consultant and a regional director. Levin, all your career you have been doing this, bringing people together. And your keynote segment was Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. That is a very, very profound learning that I've learned in my own career as well. And we also have Anita. Anita is a co-founder and CEO of The Grand, a group coaching platform designed to help people navigate transitions at the intersection of life, work and life. Very, very interesting, Anita. We do have to hear more about that. Anita is also the former head of knowledge of First Round Capital. She's a former executive coach at Reboot.io. And interestingly, she's also a former assistant VP at Deutsche Bank, managing investment portfolios. So her segment was leader as coach. Yes, another very interesting segment. Do go back and listen to it after this, after our interesting panel today. Okay, so done with the introductions. Oh, my own introductions. I'm the CEO and founder of Globetrotter Consultancy. We are a culture transformation company. Why I'm so interested to moderate this panel is because it is everything that everybody is going to share today is very close to my heart. Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast is my turning point in my career, 11. And that I personally experienced the outcome of culture eating strategy for breakfast, and then started the Globetrotter Consultancy 10 years ago. And I'm also doing my PhD currently on entrepreneurial mindset. So very interested and excited to hear the sharing from you all. Okay, all of you, Margaret, Anita, Levin, all three of you all, including me also, we went through a career that was focused on building products, an operational background. But somewhere along the point, you switch careers to focus on people. What was that turning point? Margaret, you want to go first?
Sure. Thank you for your wonderful introduction as well. You mentioned founding the UX user experience community and culture program for Google. And I would say that that was a big turning point for me. I had been working on building product at Google, spent a lot of time on Google Search, Google Maps, Chrome, and it was really fascinating. I really enjoyed it. But after a while, I just realized that where I was focusing, even as I was building product, was on building the organization that built the product. And it was a really important part of building product was having an effective, well-running, motivated team. And the larger that Google got, the more I saw how challenging that could be to do that in a very cohesive way across the company. And so my interest turned to how could we actually focus on culture? Because yes, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, We'll take a look at what's going on at Twitter right now, for example, right? And so I wanted to really invest in how do we create a culture and foster a community so that they can feel collectively motivated to, share their brilliance with each other, actually feel motivated to stay at Google, because we spend a lot of time investing in recruiting people. We want them to stay once they're there, and we want them to be able to share their expertise. And that got harder the bigger the company got, because the way companies organize for efficiency is we tend to organize in these kind of like business units, which essentially are silos. And what I was really interested in doing was seeing how culture and community could be basically an antidote to that siloed tendency that companies have. And so that was really my interest in focusing on the people part of organizations and building product.
Amazing, very impressive. I mean, it must have been so meaningful enough that you did a carry switch after that.
Yes. And so I did that for about 5 years, and it was really great. The program is still running, and it's grown since I left. But what I realized from working across Google, like talking to many different leaders within the organization, is that leaders don't get a lot of support. We tend to sort of grow into the role. Yes, you can get hired into a role, but often when you enter an organization as a leader, whether you're promoted from within or you're hired from the outside, you really don't get a lot of training. You're sort of just kind of thrown into the fire and expected to figure it out. And in speaking to so many leaders across Google, I realized that coaching was something that could really, is something that really helps leaders to get that space to reflect on, where they need to focus on, where they want to invest in themselves in order to become a more effective leader. And also, I was getting coached at the same time, and I had a fantastic coach that really kind of helped me further, just my leadership development. And it really kind of opened the door for me to look into coaching, as like a more focused way to work on the culture piece by focusing on working with leaders, because leaders are such an important part of the overall system.
And the decisions they make impact the whole company, the
Yes,
whole department.
critical. Yeah.
Yes, it's a critical.
So
Okay, very
that's
nice.
how I ended up in coaching.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much for that.
Thanks.
Moving on to Anita. Anita, you were an investment banker, and then you moved on into coaching, right? And why?
Yeah, there are a couple of turning points, I would say. So I was working in private wealth management, and I did that because I did love people and, really helping them achieve their fiduciary goals. But what I noticed is just the impact that I could have on them was limited. It was really focusing on their portfolio, and there was just so much more that I wanted to do. And one thing that I did when I was working at the bank was I noticed that women were leaving at a much higher rate than their counterparts, women who are VP level and below. And it was because there was no stickiness, nothing really connecting them to one another. And it was a huge problem. And I realized, okay, what could I do to solve this? And so I, along with some of my colleagues, created a platform for this group to really connect with each other, share knowledge with each other, talk about learnings and hearing stories from senior management. And over time, over the next 2 years, that retention rate went up dramatically. And it was the first foray into, okay, how can we use community to create these outsized business impacts? And even though my day job was really investing, I realized I'm spending more of my time working on these extracurriculars that are more people oriented. And so that was, for me, the first aha moment that I had that, okay, I need to actually, devote my career to this. And how can I do that? And so I decided to go to business school. And so I was at Wharton. And one thing I noticed when I was there is, again, we have a class of 840 students who are all incredible. They come from amazing backgrounds. But I noticed that people are always stuck at this, what I call real-time talk. How was that test yesterday? How was that party? And no one was getting into the depth of who they are. And again, I thought, okay, what can I do to really help that? And so I, along with one of my classmates, started a group called Storytellers that allowed people to have a platform to share stories about who they are, what they value, what their hopes, dreams, failures were. And again, it started as something small and then became one of the largest organizations on campus today. And I hear from students, I was just back at Reunion a couple of weeks ago, and I hear from current students that it's really helped shape this social fabric where people can make deeper human connections and really, share more openly and more vulnerably with each other. And I'll say, like, the last thread to that is when I went to work at First Run Capital, I used to work with a lot of founders and similarly wanted to bring them together to share knowledge with each other. And what I noticed at first is they were stuck in what I call Silicon Valley speak. Things like, I'm crushing it. Things are awesome. My company's doing really well. And I realized I was like, okay, that's actually not helpful. How can I help create guiding principles so that people can share vulnerably their real struggles that they're facing? And that's when everything shifted. People would come to these sessions for 4 or 5 hours and talk about their self-worth, self-doubt. Am I good enough as a founder? And emerge feeling transformed because, one, they felt less alone on their journeys. And then two, they felt like I have a group of people who know exactly what I'm going through, who have my back. And so that was my first insight into how I can use really coaching, and in particular group coaching, to support, these types of groups. And then, thereafter became a coach. And then the reason I started the Grand was really to make that powerful group coaching model more accessible to people across, different levels, because traditionally coaching is really just for executives at the top. And so how can we give people that same level of support when they need it most? And what I think people need it most when they are going through transitions, like being a founder or a new manager or a new parent, and feel like they don't have anyone to talk to.
And that is an amazing initiative. And I personally stepped out at the height of my career 10 years
Mm-hmm.
ago from my corporate world into entrepreneurship, starting out Globetrotter. And personally can attest to you that it is a different journey. It's a lonelier journey. I worked with a social business incubator who supported me, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why I still have Globetrotter Consultancy. Otherwise, I
Mm-hmm.
probably would have given up halfway. So
Yeah.
having a group support, having someone to, there's ups and downs, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't really share that with your team because your team looks upon
Yes.
you to be strong and navigate through the path. So
Mm-hmm.
having a group that, or having people that we can share, it's a very nice initiative, and well done for that. And
Thank
moving
you.
on to Levent, you had a career from tourism, from travel tourism to connecting people, and all your life you've been connecting people. um, what what why do you do this?
Uh, yeah, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and you guys are doing a fantastic job. I mean, this is a journey that I have truly enjoyed working with all of you. Secondly, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, culture eat strategy for breakfast. Don't get me wrong, strategy is extremely important, but what we need always don't realize is the culture. What is the culture? How do I make sure that these two are aligned? But a lot of times that's where the failures start, when you don't realize how does this group work? How do we understand? I mean, as I think Margaret said about Twitter, I mean, this is what's happening in Twitter right now. I mean, there's a strategy. Does it fit to the culture of the organization? We shall all see, but more than likely not. Now, uh, why? I mean, I think it's also my culture where I grew up. I had the the my way of dealing with anything was through communities, and I took that as my sign that I need to do what I needed to do. But I didn't realize that up until at the age where I was probably mid-career, when I realized that how important the human element is in everything. Um, why do I bring people together? Because I truly believe that. or whether we call that a network or community or just being a team. I think there is value in different opinions in life, and having bring everybody together and working as a team. Always, I mean, if you want to give me a good example of about myself, I used to play basketball. I mean, with this height, I know I'm not very tall, but in Turkey, I was kind of a tall guy. So I love passing. I mean, that was my thing. I love passing and let other people score. And that kind of reflected in my life, where I was always trying to bring people together where we can achieve things. But the funny thing is, it did not happen for a long time, and there's a reason for it because I'm the first generation immigrant in the United States. I didn't have a network. I didn't have too many people around me. So I've done a lot of things alone and start building the network by that way. And it takes time to build those networks. And I realized that the one way I can help everyone else around me is by means of helping other people network with each other, and being able to bring those different elements together. So, and I became I think I'm probably one of the first users of LinkedIn because I saw the value in there, and I said, okay, if anything, I should bring everyone my network, expand my network through LinkedIn. I mean, and in a way, a lot of things I've been doing lately was related to that network that I created. Um, the other part is also a very personal part. I love helping people. It's a it's a passion of mine, and I know Anita and Margaret are in the same because we all want to be able to reach out, create that space for people that haven't been there yet, and be able to hold their hands and bring it to the next level. I think that's has been my passion, and I didn't realize it up until a certain age how I can do that. But with my current job and my position at UN as a consultant and trainer, I think I managed to start working on that area. It started in 2005 when I really realized that this is my calling and I want to help other people. And what ways, I don't know, but I try to bring that. So bringing to everything together is kind of my passion for business reasons as well as personal reasons. Uh,
Lovely,
I,
Levent.
yeah, go ahead,
And
Marcel.
Wharton Interactive, you
Yeah,
you are now in this senior director of strategic partnership in Wharton Interactive. So it is your job now to bring people together
yeah,
to look at a new way of
yeah.
learning. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the reason, funny thing, because Wharton Interactive is relatively a new organization within Wharton. As we know, as you all might know, Wharton is almost 170 years old. So Wharton Interactive is kind of the edtech arm of Wharton, and the mission is to democratize and transform education. So when I first approached the position with the senior leadership, Sarah Combs and Ethan Malik, I said, if we're going to create this and really democratize education, we need to create strategic partnerships globally. So I said, we're not doing business development, we're not doing sales, but we're bringing people that believes in our mission. So I said, if you guys are okay, let's call this strategic partnership. And that was a journey we started 7 months ago. And right now we are really building this strategic partnership with many different organizations globally. Or, I mean, but the part that I really love, because I love doing it, but and they're paying me for that. Don't tell that
Yes,
to anyone. I hope nobody
that's the
listens to
that's
this.
the best job, right? To do something you love doing, something that comes naturally to you and
Yeah,
get paid for it.
yeah.
Yes, yes.
But see, this is the funny thing about Salah. I didn't know I would love this. I mean, it takes time to understand. For anybody who's listening to this, you can't just know what you're going to do. Like Anita's and Margaret's case, we just find our way. So it's okay to fail a few times here and there. So
And
let me stop here.
it's
Levent, it's your ikigai, if you're familiar with that. Yeah.
for students who are listening in today, you will soon be graduating, or you already been in some career part or some entrepreneurship part. That path, as you grow in it, will lead you to where to that niche that you will find, or it will find you, is actually. And there's a question from audience on how do you build a network? How
Who
do you
wants to
build?
go first?
Levin, you can go first. Oh, sorry.
Margaret, I think Margaret
Margaret
go.
can go first. Margaret can go first. How do you build a network?
I'm going to answer this in a slightly roundabout way. What I realized about myself was that I'm a connector, so I tend to connect people, which was something that somebody actually said to me, and that's when I first realized it. Because I tend to be actually somewhat introverted as well, right? So I'm not somebody that easily goes out to these big networking events and whatnot, but I don't know if I have just like a mental Rolodex always going in my mind, but I'm always interested in saying, like, you should talk to so-and-so. When I hear what people are looking for, I connect them with somebody else that I think that. So I would say find the connectors in your life, because they do exist, and they're I think that they can be incredibly valuable if you're looking to build your network. And yeah, I mean, that was actually also why I was interested in doing this community and culture program, because I realized, like, I could be a connector at scale if I did this, as a program, as a structured program. So I would say that just first off, just find those connectors. Is it a professor? Is it a fellow student, an advisor? There's somebody in your life that probably can help you find that beginning of a network.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. Anita?
Yeah, I think for me, two things come to mind. One is really following your curiosity. I think that a lot of times when you think about, our paths to where we are today, the reason a lot of us got here was because we were really curious and we were able to really, move forward in whatever domain we were wanted to learn more about. And I always made the intention to do that. Whenever there was a professor who talked about something that I was really interested in, I would follow up with them. And the other thing I would say is there's this fallacy that to be a good networker, it has to be all about you. And I want to remind everyone to be interesting, be interested. And so it's really about asking questions and creating these genuine connections with people that you don't know. When you go into a space and you think, okay, I'm going to have to network, immediately you might feel uncomfortable. People don't love that word. And so I like to think of it as I'm going to get to know people on a deeper level. And it doesn't need to be 50 people that I get their business card and I do something with. It's really, how can I form a genuine connection? And so a lot of it is about, listening to their stories, asking questions, and being really present with them. I think that is, one of the greatest gifts we can give people. And when I look back on my career, a lot of the people who helped me, it wasn't me asking them for something or them asking me for something in the moment, but it's truly just building a human connection and then being able to follow up with them in the future and doing it in a more natural way.
Very nicely put, Anita. When I started Globetrotter 10 years ago, and my mentor said that you can have the best product on earth, but if no one knows about it, there's no point in it. So you do have to do the marketing. That was the one thing I didn't want to do. And, it's like I just didn't want to go and sell my product to people or my services to people. And then he told me this. Okay, don't look at it as marketing, just look at it as getting to know people, making friends, and just go out there and just know people and have a conversation. Maybe they don't need your product, maybe that conversation is enough, but someone might need it. So that worked for me as well. So nicely put, thank you for that, Levin.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting question, and I always had that idea that you just go out there and meet people, and it will turn out somehow, somewhere. Um, and I think that's true. I was hesitant to say that at the beginning, but I realize more and more that in life, you don't know why you meet certain people.
Mhm.
You just have to do it, and you connect with them. To Anita's and Margaret's point, you connect with them at a personal level. You sort of understand and have these little flickers. Like, it could be very simple things like a score, a golf, or something, and that you connect. Although I don't golf, I talk about golf. So it's also self-development where you have to know who you're talking to or which medium you're talking to. So do a little bit homework before you go to a place. And I mean, we have, like you just did, Valsala, you looked at our LinkedIn profile and you talked about us. I mean, there's a little bit of doing that helps. It doesn't have to be LinkedIn, by the way. But one thing I want to tell people is don't look at these as something you're going to gain from immediately.
Mhm.
You have to let it go. You don't know where this is going to come back to you and how it's going to come back to you. Never, I mean, the one argument I always do, just so that you know, I was in Dubai attending a big conference on HR, and I told the team that, guys, we're not here to sell. We're here
Mhm.
to meet people. We're here to tell them the story, as Anita would say. We're
Mhm.
trying to explain them why we're here and let them see if there's value in that. So these are things to build networks. To everyone's point, it's not like going there and starting these speed networking things where you change all these uh, business
That
cards.
drains you and doesn't really work in the long run because you don't really remember people anyway, and they don't remember you.
Yeah. I mean, there's little things that you put in these conversations or in these meetings that makes them either you remember them at a personal level or they remember you. So it's a process, but you have to like what you're doing. And funny, Margaret said she's an introvert. I'm an introvert too, but I
So
do
am
good.
I.
Yeah,
So am
and I
I.
do good networking somehow. It works. It's just building again to the first question you asked. I think I like people, bringing together, helping people, and I think that's part of the network. You have to really like.
Having a genuine conversation and connecting to the human being in front of you.
Yeah.
I think
You
that
don't
that
you don't ask them, are you going to buy our product? Never ask that question. Even if it's the most important meeting. Let them feel that. Let's go with, slowly build the relationship.
Okay. Thank you, Lemon. Thank you for that.
Okay.
And each of us have our way of connecting to people. What works for you? Maybe Anita first. What works for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it probably starts with what I witnessed as a kid with my parents. And so community was just a big part of our life growing up. My parents are from Bangladesh, and we would actually travel around the country performing Bengali plays as a way to build connection with other people, other Bangladeshis in America. And I think for me, what works for me is finding that genuine interest, like that shared interest that we have, and being able to build upon that. And the second thing is really the other thing I saw from my parents is they would always have people over for dinner, friends, family. They'd always host people. They would, we didn't even have that much space, but they would let people stay overnight, distant relatives and all of that. And we would all have dinner together, and there was never a kids table. We always sat with them. And I think what I noticed as a young child is just the type of questions my parents were able to ask their friends to get to that deeper level of understanding. And, I'd mentioned that before. I think that is one of the most important things, is asking questions without any sort of, judgment or any sort of intention beyond just getting to know someone. And so that's what I tend to do with my personal and professional networks, is really be with them, not think about, okay, what am I going to say next based on what they say, but really just take what they're giving. I think one quote I love, it's a Parker Palmer quote, and it talks about how the human soul doesn't want to be advised, fixed, or saved, but rather wants to be witnessed and seen and heard and acknowledged exactly as it is. And I think that's one of the best things we can do to really, really deeply connect with people.
Lovely. Very nice. Thank you. Margaret?
Yeah, I have to plus one what you just said, Anita. I really agree with the being a really good listener, without judgment, right? And because people do want to be heard sometimes, especially people who maybe don't have a lot of power in whatever organization that they're in. And I think maybe similar to that, not only being a good listener, but also being a good reflection of maybe what's happening, whatever is going on in the cultural moment. I remember when a lot of the violence against Asians was happening and really, dominating the news, that there was a moment where I was really unsatisfied with the kind of corporate line, whenever these events came out. And I just really felt like, okay, this is not speaking to me at all. Like some what I'm hearing is kind of the official emails that would come out. And so I just started writing my own to the community that I had access to, and that opened up a lot of connection for me, for other people who, like you said, Anita, just felt like they wanted to be seen, and they, like I, did not feel like we were being seen, in that moment. And so I do think it's both the listening, but also, like, can you also be somebody that can reflect the moment? Because I think that can be really powerful as well.
Okay. Thank you, Margaret. Levin?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I really believe to be a good connector is to be yourself, be honest, be yourself, tell them as it is. Don't try to fake it, because you're not going to win that one. They'll remember you. So being authentic, I think, is very critical, not just as a connector, but as a leader. And if you can build those trustworthy relationships by being yourself, I think you become a good connector. Now, you can't connect with everyone that you're going to meet, as we all know, but that honesty and coming out forthright, just saying what you think rather than moving around.
And very true, Levin, is also a less pressurizing, because you can just be yourself and it's okay to be yourself. And I remember my years as a student, it's like I was a lot more concerned about making an impression and saying the right things, and that's actually very stressful. But as I grew older, I realized I just have to be myself. Um, People will like me for me, and some people might not agree with me, but they'll still like me for being truthful, or it's like just being
And,
me, and that's fine. And it's so much nicer to just be me and not be anyone else. So yes.
and if you want to have long-term connections, I think you have to have those fundamentals where you can both be yourselves and have differences. I mean, it doesn't have to be, you all aligned, but be able to talk about it honestly. But I totally also understand at that younger age, probably some of our listeners, they have that peer pressure, and that's going to make them say, what should I say to make this better? And my advice is be yourself. I know you might not win the person's, whatever you're going after, but at the end of the day, you're going to respect yourself more later on. So I would suggest, aside from what Anita and Margaret, they were definitely good, points in how to connect. But from a personal view, I would say be yourself, be honest, and build trust.
Many years ago in my corporate work, in the beginning of my corporate career, one of my bosses told me, Valsala, just be truthful. Okay, don't be too much in a rush to go up the corporate ladder. Work your way up genuinely, because if you go up there too fast and you're not ready, you will fall anyway. So work your way up there, and that has actually helped me, being truthful to myself and being truthful to to my bosses, and keeping them informed, and just that has actually helped, contrary to what people have the perception that in corporate world you cannot be yourself, you cannot be truthful. You can, and that will actually help you um, rise up your corporate ladder, and eventually probably move out to a career like all of us did, that is much more fulfilling, or very much more meaningful. I
Or
have
at the
this,
end, also, Valsala, find yourself. I mean,
yeah,
where
yes,
we
yes.
all have changed what we're doing. I think that's partially because we realize who we are and what we need to
This
be.
this is a very deep and meaningful panel session. Thank you, everyone. But I do have a question from the audience. Most people don't see helping people as a profit generating career. Could you help to elaborate on the form from your experience? How how true or untrue this is? Let me
Well,
read that again.
honestly, I know,
Most,
honestly,
yeah.
I heard it. Businesses are to help people solve problems. So when you look at it at the macro level, it's actually you're solving problems. And if you want to solve problems, you need to understand people. So I'd say this is the easiest way to answer this question is you're solving problems. So I'll let Anita or Margaret add it to that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it goes hand in hand. And as an executive coach and working in venture, I saw a lot of these founders that I worked with, and most of their challenges were interpersonal and intrapersonal, like really thinking about how they view themselves and building up that emotional resilience, and then also how they communicate with one another. And a lot of the reasons companies fail are because of people issues, co-founder issues, management issues. And I think, like, to the question, helping people, it is a prudent business decision. If we invest in people, help them, within our own companies and across our networks, then, as cheesy as it sounds, the world will truly be a better place because everyone will feel like they'll have a deeper sense of belonging. And research shows that when people have a higher sense of belonging within an organization, it actually leads to a 56% increase in performance. And so I think it's not one or the other. I think there is like real business outcomes and financial outcomes if you do focus on people.
And building relationships actually is through helping each other out, being there for each other, and at a
Yeah.
deeper level. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, that's the whole premise of why we started the Grand is no one should walk alone through life when you're navigating these big, meaty challenges. And so, yeah, we want to solve that. And that's a huge, potential business. So, yeah.
I think there's
Mark,
so many businesses that are predicated on helping people, and maybe we don't think about it. I mean, coaching obviously is
Yeah.
one, but a lot of like management consultancies, a lot of what they're doing in addition to some of the strategy work is they're figuring out a lot of the organizational dynamics as well, and advising members of the organization. So it might be disguised as something else other than helping people, but I do think there's a lot in
like
business that centers around
design
it.
dep- design,
Yes.
yeah, that's also a very good example of that, right? It's
Yeah, it's a coaching organization that's really focused on coaching creatives
Mhm.
specifically as an industry. And I just think that, you could probably have variations of that for many different types of creative, whether it's creatives or engineers or, whatever function or career that somebody has. Everybody needs some guidance, so if you're not getting it on the job, it is available through coaching or consultancies or
And
whatever.
it shortens the learning curve. Like, you could
Yeah.
you could fall down, get up, fall down, get up, and or you could learn to shorten that curve by learning from someone else,
Yeah,
someone else's
exactly.
experience. Thank you for that. We're almost to the end of our panel. Such an interesting panel, but we are almost to the end of the panel. We have 5 minutes. What would you like to leave our young audience here today with, who are starting off their careers?
I'll go first, no problem. If that's okay with
Yes,
Anita or
yes, Levent.
Margaret.
Yes.
Listen, you don't know what you're going to do in 10 years. You can make plans, but unless you are very lucky, you will figure out yourself. So never worry about not being successful or not feeling the right. You just have to let it go. You have to make sure that you keep going, you're trying, understanding who you are, authentic, be yourself. And then things will come to you. Build your network, and then things will come even better for you. So I would say it's just a process, but patience is one of the virtues we need to have in business life.
And enjoy the adventure of life. Nice. Margaret?
Yeah, well, I have two kids in college, a sophomore and a freshman, and what I tell them is don't worry about what your career is going to be, just focus on learning, because that's the lifelong thing that will stick with you. The career that you eventually have will change over and over again, and it may not even exist today because the world is changing so fast. So just love the learning. That's what I would encourage.
Nice, agreed. Um, Similar advice to my daughters, yes. Anita?
Yeah, such great advice already. I would add, don't compare your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. I think in our heads, we always feel like, oh, I need to do more, and they're so much more successful and they have it all figured out. But I promise you, on the inside, most of us feel the same. Like we're all just trying the best that we can. We're trying to figure it out. And as Levent and Margaret mentioned, it's all about the journey and the process and really loving the learning. And I think the best thing you can do is learn about yourself. Like self-discovery and knowing who you are is the most important thing that's going to take you, as far as you want to go. So I'm excited for everyone in this group to
So
be there.
it's a lovely adventure of understanding and knowing and bringing the best in you out as well. Thank you very much. From the audience, I have a thank you, Levin. Thank you, Anita, Margaret, and Valsala for the heartwarming session. And thank you all for this amazing session. It has been my pleasure to moderate this session and get to know you all. Thank you. Lovely knowing you all.
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
It's an
you.
honor to
Thank
be
you.
here.
Thank you, Valsala.
Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening, morning, whatever's coming forward. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.